Hi everyone, welcome back to New Earth.land. Revolutionising the co-housing industry, or just revolutionising society in general, which is actually far more easy than people think because we have social media now. We have a way of coming together, coordinating ourselves and organising ourselves, hopefully, as effectively as those who love war, because they're very organised, aren't they? And this new world order, it's orchestrated, it's pre-planned, it's considered for a long time. And so we need to borrow some of that degree of coordination, and we can use social media to do that. So if you're interested in no more rent, no more bills in society, true freedom, true abundance, well-being, then let's come together, let's subscribe, let's all be in one space so that we can start to realize this vision that you can research at newearth.land. But anyway, in this video, we're continuing with the mini-series of exposing the New World Order's Agenda 2030, really, the United Nations agenda. And, like I've alluded to before, the idea of coming together, of course, is something that they realize is a beneficial statement to make. So the UN and all of these huge multinational organizations and think tanks and huge governing bodies, like even like NAFCA and the EU, the UN in general, like, the notion, the concept itself is fine, but it's just the mentality behind it that people, I think, and generally this woke mindset is susceptible to simply agreeing with something just because it sounds like the right thing to do, without actually analysing what's taking place, and certainly being very distant from the nefarious agendas and social engineering that's taking place behind the scenes. But this video in particular is about the third goal of Agenda 2030, and I've been looking forward to it because it's health and well-being. I mean, if any of them are comedic, it's got to be this one. The idea that they care about our health and well-being is, of course, ludicrous, not only just based on what we've been through in 2020, 2021, which I'd love to talk about at length, but can't really do so on this platform, unfortunately, but just going back from the dawn of antiquity, really, like back to the beginning of society. Like, it feels like it's always been the case that we have been psychologically enslaved to this insane socio-economic model, right? Our freedom is not unconditional, it's actually conditional and contingent upon a number on a screen. So that in itself is not conducive to well-being, is it? So if their goal was seriously to improve our well-being, it would involve freedom, and you're not going to see that word written anywhere in Agenda 2030. And actually, you don't see it written hardly anywhere because people already think that they're free. And that's the problem that we're faced with. Like, the analogy that I've offered with this in the past is this sort of like pre-cognition, or this conditioned mind and prepared mind that is created throughout Western education, that comes out, and then it's got all these options available to us in terms of these different social models, different ways that we can live, but it can only consider one. And so if you think of that as the high street and perhaps some restaurants, and you just keep you're predisposed to just always go to this one restaurant, and this restaurant is analogous to society. And then when you're inside that restaurant or the cafe, whatever, and you're looking at the menu, it looks like you've got an incredible selection, incredible choice of different things, and you don't realize that it's actually a restricted or controlled option. And then let's just say that this restaurant actually turns out to be a McDonald's or a KFC or something incredibly unhealthy, like a one-star hotel or a one-star restaurant. And so you only realize that when you start seeing things from outside the box, outside of the cage that we've been incarcerated within. And then this is principally formulated through Western education. And so you've got this horrible, crappy food, and people don't realize that there's another option. It's like people say, oh, it's the life you choose. You're choosing what you want on the menu, but you're not choosing which restaurant that you can dine in. And of course, if we had the expansion of awareness, we'd be able to start realizing that we can generate a true democracy. We could start to have this transparency that we need to create a better world. But I just wanted to, that's a psychological side of it. In terms of the well-being, I mean, of course, we're in this rat race. We're running around, Monday blues, TGI Friday, Sunday scaries either. All of these phrases that are in common parlance are conducive, and it's invariable, to the fact that you're going to get stressed, you're going to get anxious, you're going to get depressed. Those things lead to the abuse of recreational drugs and even suicide, and so this general milieu that we're in, this atmosphere, is one of a 21st century psychological, rather nefarious and covert form of slavery, in which is so normalized, as Aldous Huxley said, the victim of mind manipulation does not know that he is a victim. To him, the walls of his prison are invisible, and he believes himself to be free. That he is not free is apparent only to other people, because his servitude is strictly objective. Okay, so that last phrase there is operative. Strictly objective, as I was just alluding to. It's absolutely objective that you're going to go to this restaurant. It's absolutely objective that you will go to this office. And if you're not going to go to that office, well, you're still going to go to an office, but it's that one over there. And you're going to stay there from 9 till 6 minimum if you're involved in a creative discipline, where it's like, with me being an architect and going through the education system or whatever, and getting thrown into this kind of matrix, if you like. It's 9 a.m. till about midnight if you're lucky, especially if there's a deadline looming, which there always is, of course. And I'll never forget this one time where, you get a deadline and they sort of like, there's one place I was working, they get you into this glass cube, it's like a fishbowl in the middle of the office. And they just clap at themselves, and if you're not worked on that project and you look from the outside, you're like, what on earth is going on? And, I've had landlords as well that were also doubling up as property developers for clients at work. So effectively what was happening is I was going to work, earning money from this guy, and then at the end of the month, I'll just basically give it all back in rent, because it's so expensive in London. A lot of the illnesses are psychosomatic, like stress is behind the scenes of a lot of illnesses, I think. And that's just the well-being aspect of it. If you think of it more of a physical health, of course, like I said, I can't really talk at length about what's taking place throughout the entirety of history, it seems, or at least recent history, not least most recently in 2020, 2021. And all I'm going to say is, when you consume something, whether it's solid, liquid, gas, right? So whether it's food, the water that you're drinking, or the air that you're breathing, if those things are denatured in any way, you're asking for illness. And so it's a simple case of toxicity, and the whole field of toxicity being replaced by this false field that, begins with a V, right? virology. And this discipline has never been scientifically satisfied. And you can look into other scientists and doctors like Stefan Lanka, for example. And, the first thing people want to say is, well, what is it then? Like, what is it? Why are we getting colds? Why are we getting these flu-like symptoms? And it's actually a very simple explanation, and it's called the terrain theory, which was, at the time spearheaded by a man named Antoine Béchamp. He's a French biologist. And on the extreme other side of that, you had Louis Pasteur, who was kind of behind the germ theory, which has never been scientifically satisfied. And the predominant difference between these two schools of thought is that one states that the microbe is the primary causative agent of disease. That's the germ theory. The other states that actually the primary causative agent of disease is the condition upon which these microbes actually activate. And then those microbes transform to become what we might consider to be pathogenic, but actually what's happening is they're just consuming the dying material, the dying matter. And so I guess, like, if you're walking down the street and you see some dog poop, right? Perhaps it's just that's the first day it's been there and it looks a certain way. But if over time, over the days, it will start getting very strange. It'll go quite solid. It'll even, like, at one point start growing hairs, right? So it'll be like a sort of furry ball of poo. It's like an unfortunate image to call to the mind, but it's good to pointing out the fact that, that poop is not infected. It's just the condition, and nature is now corroding it, it's disintegrating it, it's consuming it so that it can become part of the natural life cycle again, you see. And so this is what happens when we denature our terrain, the body itself. If you drink some toxic water, or if you, God forbid, eat all of these sweets that are out there and all this junk food that we're consuming on a daily basis, it seems, what's happening is we are denaturing our bodies in a huge way, and not least through the air quality. So sometimes you might have a good diet, you might have a good water supply, but what is often skipping the radar is the quality of the air that you're breathing. So if you imagine you're outside, and the reason, by the way, I'm talking about all of this is, again, because of course they're suggesting that they are trying to promote health and well-being, but they're never going to come and discuss these sort of like root causes of illness. They just want to, I mean, I have no idea what they're proposing, but it's not going to be anything along the lines of what I'm discussing here. I imagine it'll just be something to do with like, make sure you're going for a run more often and make sure you're eating more fruits and vegetables, which actually, as I discussed in the previous video, is very troublesome if you're going to have a plant-based diet, and you may run into some issues, especially when the GMO zombie crops that I was talking about. But air quality is an incredibly important facet of health, and it's something that's overlooked because it's invisible. So if you're outside in the woodland and you're inhaling pure, fresh air, that is not going to intoxicate you at any point. But then imagine then someone puts a box over you and it's got a window, and you can call that your room, right? Your bedroom. Well, now you're in a space that has a restricted air supply, but you've got a window, so that's okay. And there's only one of you, so you'll get by. And the general purity of the air is freshened through the window. But imagine now it gets cold and you're getting towards autumn, you're getting towards winter, and you don't want the window to be open anymore. And so now you've got a problem. If you don't open that window, you've now got only a certain time frame before that air actually becomes toxic. And then further still, imagine if you're at school or you're at work, and not only do you have perhaps no windows open, no open windows, you might have a problem of Legionnaire's disease from the air conditioning units that aren't actually fulfilling their criteria of providing pure air. Instead, they're providing sort of like a bacterially infused air. That's one problem. But then also you've got a number of people that you're sharing your office with. Perhaps there's like 30 people, or perhaps there's even 100 people, depending on the scale of the office that you work in. And there lies a problem, because we don't breathe out fresh air. We're breathing out waste products, right? So carbon dioxide, that's not, if that is actually pouring into the room, again, you can't see it, but often when you go to some of these feisty, horrible pubs and these spaces where you can feel this almost moisture in the air, right? Or clubs and pubs, like the air is not pure, you're breathing in that. And if you're not careful, if you're in those spaces for long enough, it will eventually intoxicate you, and it will be an out of sight, out of mind situation. But of course, what they want to tell you is that, well, that is this physicalized pathogen, okay? Moving and being and transporting and being communicated, this so-called alleged concept of communicable diseases is sort of being passed around as like, oh, I caught this. But the simple truth is that we don't catch disease, we build it. And as I think famous, I think it's B.J. Palmer, I think he was a chiropractor, but that may not be the case. He was sort of like a well-known scientist in some regard, pointed out the truth that, if the germ theory of disease were correct, there'd be no one alive to believe it. I mean, it's so true. Like, germs are everywhere. You're simply comprised of these microbes, this bacterium. And if that were the case, that these are the primary causative agents of disease, then at what point, your body's just going to be consuming itself? Of course it doesn't, because we're constantly replenishing our bodies with energy and keeping it maintained and keeping the immune system alive. So, the idea that this is this pathogen moving around, and this hasn't actually ever been scientifically satisfied. So there is a gold standard called the Koch's postulates, which I've talked about in the past, but like I say, I don't want to get censored here on this channel, but you can scope out Koch's postulates. It's never been fulfilled in this. So for the so-called gospel of the germ theory. And so instead, it's simply the toxicity of the air. It's the toxicity. It's not this objective thing that's passing from host to host. It's simply the poor quality, the denatured quality of the air, the denatured quality of our food, and the denatured quality of our water that principally rears its sort of ugly head as it gets to fall, as it gets to winter, where we're also battling with temperature, and it's hard to maintain homeostasis. There's so many other simple explanations for what is seemingly always tried to be explained in one way, and that linear way of thinking has led to a load of medical interventions that cause more and more problems, and they know fine well what's happening, and it creates what's known as a prescription cascade. So the more you are diagnosed with something, the more the drugs that you're being treated with are going to create further issues for you, and then you're going to get drugs to treat that, so on and so on. And this is the madness. This is the evil genius for them anyway. sort of method that they are using for a health control system or an illness sort of care system. It's not a healthcare system. The notion that they care about our health is so absurd and insane to me. But it's like they're just sitting around these think tanks like the UN and Agenda 2030 and all of these big sort of Tavistock Council on Foreign Relations, all of these huge intergovernmental organizations are just sitting around thinking like, oh, what can, sort of like, I remember being in school, the coursework, it's like, I'll just put that sounds good. Like, they're just sitting around like, what sounds good, right? Let's just put this, it's literally, they're just thrown together these things because it's all obfuscation, you see. They are manipulating the woke mindset is what's taking place here. So if something sounds like it's the right thing, then for them it is the right thing, especially if it comes from authority. As Einstein said, unthinking, respecting authority is the greatest enemy of truth. And as I talk through a lot of this as well, like, let's recall some other quotes to mind, such as, all great truths begin as blasphemies by George Bernard Shaw, or Arthur Schopenhauer, I think it was, said, all truth passes through three stages. First, it's ridiculed. Second, it's violently opposed. And third, it's accepted as self-evident. So this is a process that everyone has to go through. And if someone is in that first stage, then they're going to be highly triggered by this information. And it's going to create, almost like we're seeing on an international scale now, this kind of civil war between what's traditionally known as the left and the right. But like I'm saying, it's like, this is sort of an illusion. It's polarizing the mind. It's setting us up to the sort of civil unrest that is going to give birth to this new technocracy, where there'll be like a techno dystopia, although they'll consider it to be a utopia. But yeah, just a short video then on health, and sort of exposing the notion that they in any way care about health, and the absurdity of the fact that we're clearly psychologically enslaved. No politician is ever going to mention that. And then all our physical health by way of the GMOs and the frankenfoods and the zombie crops and the poor water supply that's being fluoridated increasingly. It's all kind of insane, really. And so what do we do about this? Well, newearth.land can show a solution to this, where we're dealing with autonomous co-housing projects. So all of these things, like the food, the water, principally will be decentralized. There will no longer be arriving at our homes from the other side of the world, or just way down there. The same with the energy as well. Of course, air is an abundant resource, and what we will be doing is generating the electricity and the power supply from biofuel. So there won't be any need for these pollutants, and there are certain aspects of it you see that they're doing in terms of electric vehicles, although that's a whole other discussion about the lithium batteries and things. But the idea of actually improving the air quality of these cities obviously makes sense, because we don't want to be breathing in shite, right? So it's about a balanced mind when we approach this, and it's not about like getting sort of thinking all of this is black and white. It's not just like everything that they're doing is bad. Again, they're hiding, concealing behind certain what is ultimately superficial things in the face of what they've got planned, but it doesn't mean that those superficialities aren't beneficial as well. So let's come together, let's reclaim our land, and let's design these co-housing projects that can liberate us from compulsory labour for survival. Okay, it could be an incredible time for us. This is an incredible opportunity. We've got the New World Order pushing us downwards in this trajectory. We've got New Earth pushing us up into a more fulfilling and way of life. True freedom is what we need, and we can only create that when we come together. So that's it for now. Do check out the website, newearth.land. Do connect. It's the only way that we can come together. I'm having a hard time getting people to just press the button. It's like, it's so simple for us now. In the past, it's been tricky, and we've outsourced our power, but there's no need for us to do that anymore. So we are the people, we are the power, we are the 99%. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.